Welcome to Look Movie Recaps. Today we are explaining a 2009 action and revenge-full movie called Law Abiding Citizen. Keep spoilers alert. In the starting scenes, Clyde Shelton, a Philadelphia engineer, is at home with his daughter. She has made a bracelet for him and now making one for mommy. His wife tells him to go open the door because someone was knocking. Clyde goes to respond to the knock. When he opens the door, two guys hit him severely with a baseball bat. He falls down and he is tied by the burglar known as Derby. His partner in crime, Rupert, is busy robing. Suddenly, his wife comes out and she is also hit. She falls down while screaming. Derby tells Clyde that he can't fight fate and he stabs him in the stomach. He then goes to Clyde's wife and he also stabs her and rapes her. Their daughter comes out and she also faces the same fate. Clyde witnesses all this happen, but he is helpless. Later, Nick, Clyde's prosecutor, while having a conversation with Jonas, the district attorney, he informs him that the matter got out of hand last night because the judge ruled that the DNA from the crime scene was dubious. He decided to get a plea deal rather than going to trial with the case. He says some justice is better than no justice. He is not taking any chances. Later, Nick meets with Clyde. He tells him that Derby has agreed to testify against his partner Rupert. He continues that with this testimony, Rupert will go to death raw. Clyde asks what about Derby. Nick replies that Derby will be charged with third-degree murder. Clyde is not contented with Derby's sentence, where he will be imprisoned maximum 5 years. Nick, interested in maintaining his 96% conviction rate as prosecutor, he can't afford losing Clyde's case. So he made a deal with Derby to testify against his partner Rupert, in return to plead guilty to a third-degree murder, hence being imprisoned for less than 5 years. Nick further tells Clyde that the case was compromised by a forensic investigation and Clyde's testimony cannot incriminate either man because he blacked out during the incident. Clyde, while in tears, tells Nick that both of them are guilty. Especially Derby. Nick tells him that it's not about what you know. It's about what you can prove in court. Later in court, all goes like Nick had planned. Clyde sees Nick shake hands with Derby and he is left feeling betrayed. After court, Nick goes back home to his pregnant wife and he talks to his unborn daughter. 10 years later, Nick is at home with his grown-up daughter and wife. He has to attend Rupert's execution, which will be via lethal injection. He goes with Sarah, his assistant, and Jonas, the district attorney, because Rupert didn't have any family members to attend his execution. He is supposed to die painless and silent, but due to the change of chemicals by unknown person, he dies in agonizing pain, which is a violation of his rights. A written note that says "you can't fight fate" is found on a disposable bag that contained the lethal chemical. Nick connects this evidence to Derby, who frequently used the same statement. While they are tracking him down, an unknown caller alerts Derby that police is approaching him. He picks his gun and looks through the window and he confirms what he is being told. He immediately runs out while shooting at the police officers. While running on top of buildings, he is told to get rid of his gun if he wants to be directed to safety. He gets rid of it and he is directed to a police vehicle where he finds a police officer resting. He steals his gun and tells him to drive, which he does. They are able to escape from the police and later Derby pulls the police officer out of the car on gunpoint. He realizes that it's Clyde. He tries to shoot him only to discover that it's a trick gun that injects him with a paralyzing chemical. Derby is paralyzed but fully conscious and feeling everything done to him. He is taken to a warehouse. Clyde slowly tortures him while recording him and telling him the same words he told him 10 years ago, that you can't fight fate. He cuts him into several pieces. Later, Derby is found dead, cut into 25 pieces, and after an investigation, Nick and his team suspect Clyde. The following day, SWAT unit rides Clyde's home and they find him naked and ready for them. He doesn't resist arrest. He looks angrily at Nick as he passes him on the way to the police car. They find a photo of Nick shaking Derby's hands 10 years ago. At Nick's home, the mailman leaves a video disc and her daughter receives it thinking it's a recital. She examines it and discovers that it shows a man killing and chopping up Derby in pieces. She screams. Back to Clyde in his cell, Nick comes to interrogate him. He asks him if he killed Derby and he neither accepts nor denies. Nick is sure he is guilty but has no evidence. Because it's not about what you know, it's about what you can prove in court. Clyde promises to confess after he reaches his demands. Clyde asks for a nice bed to be brought to him in prison and Nick laughs and he denies his request. Shortly, his terrified wife phones him. She tells him about the incident of the video disc their daughter has just watched. He comforts his family and asks if the killer exposed his face, but his wife says that his face was covered. When Nick tells Jonas, the district attorney, that Clyde has sent a video disc of him killing Derby to his family and that his daughter watched it, he tells him to accept Clyde's demands in return for his confession. A new bed is brought to Clyde in prison as he requested. While in court for Clyde's bail hearing, he manages to defend himself and he convinces Judge Laura, who also presided at Rupert's trial, to agree to his bail. When the judge is almost agreeing, he turns against the court and criticizes it for its legal technicalities over justice. He confesses not only to killing Darby but also to having altered the lethal injection chemical that made Rupert's death agonizing. He adds that the judge was ready to bail him out, yet he murdered these two mentioned people. Clyde exposes them. He is removed for contempt of court and taken back to prison. Clyde asks for another Bergen. He asks for a fancy meal and an iPod for music to be brought to him at exactly 1 p.m. in return for the exact location of Bill Reynolds, who was Derby's attorney 10 years ago. Immediately, Nick and his team try to locate Reynolds but are informed by his wife that he went missing 3 days ago. They have no option but to meet Clyde's demands. The next day, a special meal is brought for Clyde. The prison warden demands multiple precautions, resulting in food arriving at Clyde's cell 8 minutes late. Regardless, he gives his exact location and tells them to hurry because they are already late. They rush to go find him. Nick and his team find Reynolds buried alive and just died few minutes back. The prison warden's delay caused him to suffocate. His oxygen tank was set to shut down at 1:15. But because Clyde received his meal at 1:08, they were 7 minutes late, and this resulted into Reynolds' demise. Back in Clyde's cell, while sharing his meal with his inmate, he stabs him and kills him in cold blood and then sleeps comfortably on his bed. While Nick and his team are still at Reynolds' crime scene, Sarah calls him and tells him that Clyde just murdered his cellmate and he is being taken to solitary confinement. Nick goes to meet Clyde in his cell. He tells him that they met Reno dead. Clyde tells him that had he kept his word and brought his lunch on time, Reynolds wouldn't have died. Nick asks Clyde if he thinks his wife and daughter would feel good about him going around killing innocent people. Clyde replies without remorse that my wife and daughter do not feel anything. They are dead. Nick's assistant Sarah finds evidence of contract payments to Clyde from the Department of Defense. So Jonas takes Nick to meet a CIA operative called Bray, who worked with Clyde. They learn that he was once a CIA brain, working in a black ops think tank on unconventional methods of killing targets. Bray tells them to assume that he can see them and hear them at all times. He also warns them that he's only in jail because he wants to be in jail. Bray tells them that each thing he does has a deeper meaning. When Nick asks how they should deal with him, Bray advises them to walk into his cell and put a bullet in his head. Otherwise they cannot stop him. As he leaves he says, "If Clyde wants you dead, you're dead." Nick and Jonas meet with Judge Laura to convince her to violate Clyde's civil rights and restrict his visiting privileges. Minutes later, Judge Laura answers a cell phone which explodes, killing her instantly. Jonas and Nick are so thrilled by the judge's death. At the prison, Nick confronts Clyde, who says these killings are not about revenge. If it was about revenge, he would have killed Nick's family in the past 10 years. Clyde gives Nick one last chance to release him and drop all charges against him before 6 a.m. or everyone will die. He is then escorted to a maximum solitary. Nick and all members of the DA's office gather in the prison for extra protection from Clyde's unprecedented murders and try to look for an accomplice that may be helping Clyde, but they fail. When it reaches 6, they are sure nothing is going to happen after nobody is hurt. They are told to go home, but bombs planted underneath their cars start exploding and kill those inside the cars, including Sarah. It's later found out that only Nick's car was untouched, inclining that he still needs him alive. Clyde was still incarcerated, so Nick assumes he is using an accomplice outside to help. Nick and Jonas are summoned by the mayor. She asks them how they can let this happen for that long in her city, and tells them she doesn't care how smart he is or who's helping him. All she wants is them getting things under control. Nick gives the mayor his word that he will do all he can to stop him. The mayor assigns extra security to all of them. Nick sends his family away to a safer place for protection. He later meets Clyde and angrily beats him up for orchestrating the death of 6 innocent people, including his assistant Sarah. Clyde tells him that he is just warming up. He says to him that he is going to bring the corrupt temple down on Nick's head. He promises him that it's going to be biblical. Later, after Sarah's funeral, an unseen man wearing black clothing powers up a remote-controlled drone armed with a rocket launcher and a .50 caliber machine gun. He shoots at them and later releases a missile that hits Jonas' car and he dies. Nick watches his friend die in front of him. The mayor is angry at Nick for his failure to protect everyone as he had promised. He is later appointed as acting district attorney by the mayor and tells him to do everything to stop Clyde, while looking for evidence that Clyde may have an accomplice working for him. Nick receives information that points to Clyde owning a small disused garage next to the prison. Nick and Detective Dunnigan arrive at the garage and while looking around, they find a tunnel system leading to all the solitary confinement cells, along with a large supply of armaments. Apparently over the past 10 years, Clyde had dug the tunnel system from his garage to the prison, and when it was finished, he deliberately had himself arrested and sent to solitary confinement in order to sneak out of the prison to carry out his killings undetected and all by himself, and then sneak back into his cell the very same day. Detective Dunnigan opens a small hole and finds that it leads to Clyde's cell, which is empty, indicating he is out orchestrating another murder. Disguising as a janitor, Clyde plants a cell phone activated bomb in City Hall, planning to kill the mayor and anyone attending her meeting. Nick and his team gain access to the 5th floor and find the bomb directly under the 6th floor, where the mayor is situated at a security meeting. Garza attempts to disarm the bomb, but is unsuccessful and warns them to leave it alone. The three men then decide not to tell the mayor what is going on, as Clyde will be watching and will detonate the bomb with any sign of detection. They then decide what to do with the bomb. Upon returning to his cell through the underground tunnel, Clyde discovers Nick in his cell waiting for him. Clyde offers one last deal, but Nick says that he no longer makes deals with murderers, which Clyde appreciates. Nick says to Clyde that if he detonates the bomb, it's a decision he will have to live with for the rest of his life. Clyde decides to detonate the bomb anyway, but as Nick exits and locks the cell, he calmly says, "Like I said, it's a decision you'll have to live with for the rest of your life," which I think now is about 25 seconds. He then begins to flee the building. At the same time, Detective Dunnigan seals the hatch in the back of the cell to ensure Clyde doesn't escape. Clyde realizes that the bomb was placed under his cot, but he smiles and stares thoughtfully at a bracelet his daughter had made for him which says Daddy. The cell explodes, with the last shot of Clyde alive being of him looking up with a satisfied expression. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe for more of these videos. Have a great day.